This is Far From Home. I'm Scott Gurian. It was on February 10th, 2 weeks before the Russian invasion began, when we first started chatting over Telegram.
Hi, this is Savelli president of Kiev, Ukraine. Recorded a message for Scott to describe the current situation around the border crisis with Russia and the general attitude of what seems to be happening right now in Ukraine.
If you've been listening to my show for a while, you might recognize Savelli's voice, since he was one of the people I included in the latest installment of my COVID Stories series that I released back in December. As the situation with Ukraine started heating up early last month, I decided to reach back out to him to see what he thought.
I feel that right now Ukrainians are mostly split into two very uneven groups. The first, very small minority that is highly active on Facebook, highly active on Twitter, has been on high alert since early January, talking about evacuation plans and how they are going to go to war. But to be honest, I feel like most of these people are either already living somewhere abroad or just the well off middle class of the big cities that is really disconnected from the actual situation on the ground. At the same time, if we take a look at the majority, especially at people who are living along the contact line, everyone is way more restrained and calm and doesn't really understand what the whole panic is all about this time.
Now, just to remind you what it was like back in early February, here in the West, we were hearing nearly daily news reports of increasing numbers of Russian troops amassing along the border and fake Russian videos of supposed Ukrainian led attacks that could serve as a pretext for war. But they were on the ground in Ukraine. Savelli told me lots of folks, including he himself, weren't actually all that worried.
The last few weeks have been quite an amazing experience in terms of seeing how this whole story plays out from a media standpoint of view. I'm genuinely confused and baffled to see this high grade of hysteria coming in, being pressured from the US and some European media, particularly from the UK.
You see, Ukraine had technically been at war with Russia ever since the annexation of Crimea and the invasion of the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine back in 2014. So people there had learned to live with this conflict as the backdrop to their daily lives. Folks had gotten worn down over time, and many now had a tendency to shrug off the latest developments as just more of the same.
Of course, it goes without saying that Russia is still an incredibly irritating and aggressive neighbor that always can play a wild card and do absolutely logical things that won't make much sense. But we have sort of gotten used to living with that in the past 7 years. Not much has changed in that regard. The only thing that has, in fact, changed a lot is the kind of coverage that it gets from the West.
And to many Ukrainians, the developments reported in that coverage didn't seem particularly alarming or even convincing. Like the news story about the Russian military shipping blood supplies to the border to prepare to treat battlefield injuries, it didn't make much sense, and who are the sources anyway? The claim that Russia was planning to stage a coup and install a pro-Russian Ukrainian politician as president, that guy was so unpopular that no one took that report seriously. And the speculation that Russian tanks needed to invade before the temperature warmed and the ground thawed, didn't outsiders know that spring had basically already arrived in Ukraine? To Savelli, it all just seemed like fake news, and yes, he used that term in his conversation with me. Perhaps, he said, it was part of an effort by Joe Biden and Boris Johnson to distract from their political problems at home, and after past U.S. intelligence failures surrounding the Iraq War and the more recent withdrawal of forces from Afghanistan, America didn't seem to have much credibility. After all, he told me, this was far from the first time that Russia had amassed its troops along the Ukrainian border, so it was hard to believe that this time was in any way different.
So I would definitely say that most of Ukrainians are experiencing a strong level of fatigue from all this talk. Most are just saying, when it happens, so let's see when it happens. and just carrying on with their lives, going to clubs, going abroad on vacations, and etc. This whole story sounds and looks like a much bigger deal right now from Washington than it is from Kiev.
I last spoke to Savelli on February 22nd after Putin gave that speech declaring the Donetsk and Luhansk regions as independent from Ukraine and said he was sending in so called peacekeeping forces. The U.S. had evacuated its embassy in Kyiv, and people were starting to get more concerned, but Savelli was still relatively calm. He told me there were a few possible scenarios, but both involved Russian forces pretty much staying in the eastern part of the country. He never seriously considered there'd be any sort of full-scale invasion of the rest of Ukrainian territory. 2 days later, that's exactly what happened. My point in playing back this conversation now is not in any way to single out Savelli or say, see, I told you so, but to show you why so many Ukrainians were so surprised and unprepared for what ended up taking place. At one point in our conversation, Savelli wrote me that he thought Putin would be measured in whatever decisions he made. The other side isn't irrational, despite the image they're trying to give themselves, he said. Yeah, I responded, but it does seem really hard to figure out their logic sometimes. Savelli suggested I search online for this American scholar by the name of Stephen Kotkin, who he said could help explain Putin's logic to me. So I looked him up, and it turns out Kotkin is a professor at Princeton who's written 8 books about Russian history. Here's what he said about Putin in a podcast interview back in January.
He wants his demands met without having to fight the war in Ukraine.
Kotkin predicted that the most likely course was for Russia to simply ramp up its cyber attacks.
He's constrained by the fact that Russian public opinion is not in favor of invading Ukraine.
So, yeah, that prediction ended up being incorrect. And if this guy, who some people regard as one of the foremost Russia experts, got it wrong, I guess it's only fair to cut Savelli and other Ukrainians some slack. But to give credit where credit is due, I should add that there was one point Savelli made that in retrospect ended up being right on the money.
I would definitely advise against considering Putin as some sort of a master chess player, because I feel that's also a strong narrative in a lot of Western press. There is this tendency to view him as this super villain who knows each step ahead, plays the West, and so on. Just feels like the West is in real need of a nemesis, and he's just standing there to fill those shoes. But it often goes not as they plan.
As I mentioned, I haven't been able to reach Savelli since the invasion started. I'm pretty sure he's okay since I could see he's been online, but I totally get that he has bigger priorities right now, given that he has bombs falling all around him. I've also spent the past month attempting to contact a number of other people there on the ground to get a first-hand perspective on what's currently happening in Ukraine, but it's been kind of challenging. I even had some people try to help me, like my friend Peter.
Hey, so it's 3:48 a.m. on Saturday. I've just been up since everything has started on Wednesday. I just heard back, thank God, at last, from my cousin Taras. And they've got guns ready to go. He does not, for the moment, want to do any podcasts because shit is still happening. What he did say was that he wants people to believe in Ukraine. That's important.
After messaging a ton of people, a few days ago, I finally had some success.
Hello?
Hi there, it's Scott. I reached Alexander in the western Ukrainian city of Ternopil, where he'd fled from his home in Kyiv.
I'm an activist, I'm a volunteer, and also I elected. I'm a member of unit in administration of my region.
Alexander told me that this whole experience of being caught in the middle of a war still seemed sort of surreal.
You know, when I saw on TV or on YouTube something like this, that somewhere in the world someone is fighting, there's troops and bombs and everything. You see it, you're sorry for it, you pity, and then you go and do your business, do your job, and forget about it. And I must say that even when it started on Donbass in Ukraine, I had some kind of the same feeling that, well, it didn't concern me. And I can't describe it because it's hard to describe, but I never wish someone to feel it, how it is. We are not warriors. I didn't still take arms in my hands. But if something happens and they will come here, I think I will take arms too.
So tell me your story. So you were in Kyiv at the time and then you left when things got bad, or what happened?
Yes, I've been in my apartment for 2 or 3 days. But after 3 days, when I saw on my wife's face, I understood that it's hard for her. And our friends invited us to a suburb of Kiev in private house. And for the next about 10 days, we were there. We heard the artillery and watched all the news, and we understood that in the left or in the right, for about 10 or 20 kilometers, there's already Russian troops. And we had some kind of island that was separated by river. So if they come, we would be, cut from civilization. And our friends had 2 kids. We didn't want to risk, so we sit in 2 cars and went west. The trip was very hard. First day it was about 14 hours driving. Then we slept in village, left our friends because there was their relatives, and went with my wife to Ternopil, and here our relatives met us. And now we are here.
I understand it's very hard to get around the country right now. I mean, so many people are on the move and there's like roadblocks everywhere. Like it takes forever to get anywhere.
Yes, it's very hard, and traffic jams are all over country, not in the cities, all over country. It's lots of cars to the gas station, and also hundreds of block posts. You understand what's block post?
Like checkpoints, you mean?
Like checkpoint, yes, with armed people who check your documents, your car, everything, and it's everywhere. It's good because it's our people with arms, not Russians.
Right.
But it also takes time, it also disturbs, and it's not a, pleasant voyage.
Yeah. What is the mood of people? Are people kind of panicked? Are they just kind of calm and kind of trying to get through the situation? Like, how would you describe what it's like?
Everyone understands that Ukraine has to pass it. Ukraine has to go through it. After this war, we will have a real independence. And after this war, for the whole world, Russia will become who they really are. So people, they are afraid for their lives, for their relatives. Every day, about 2 times a day, we have air alarm. Everyone goes to bomb shelter. You are there from about half an hour to an hour. Then alarm that everything is ended. So how would you feel? How would you feel?
Yeah.
The pressure, the psychological pressure is very hard, very hard.
Do you happen to have any family or friends who live in Russia?
Yes, of course.
And
of course.
have you been in touch with them while all this has been happening?
Yes, I've been in touch with them. But, imagine that for 20 or 30 years by television, you are told a lie about Ukraine, lie about people, about everything. I understand that if I would live in Russia, I think this would influence on me too. And also, the atmosphere in Russia is very hostile to each other. So if you think in other way, it's not like US or in Ukraine. Well, you think another way. No, there you will have problems. from government and from other people who are kind of zombies, by TV. And also they are very, very afraid, even those who understand what is going on. And there's a lot of people who understands what's going on. They are afraid and they keep silence.
So when you talk to your family and friends in Russia and you describe to them what's going on, do they believe you? Do they think you're making it up? What do they say?
Yes, my friends and my family, of course, they believe. But as far as you know, is no more Facebook on Russia because Russian government blocked it.
Right.
Is no more Instagram. So they really, really don't have information, real information. And from every corner, from every TV, from everywhere, they have fake information. And it's really hard for them. But they believe me. They even apologize. They told me that we want to leave Russia. But right now, it's already not even possible to leave Russia. For them.
Describe your situation now. You said you're staying in the city of Ternopil.
Yes, Ternopil is very beautiful city, is nice city. Here is, real Ukrainians, patriots.
Do you feel safe where you are right now?
Except rockets, yes. For example, today...
That's a big caveat. Yes.
Yes. For example, today I went to a mall, but when I started to drive, alarm, and for about an hour, everything closed.
Oh,
Everything closed.
the air raid sirens went off, and then all the businesses, everyone closed, and everyone went to the
yes.
shelters. Yeah.
But Ukrainian people don't go to shelter. Someone go to shelter, and all the rest just waiting outside, because it's impossible. It's been already for a month, and every day it's air alarm. So you can't live like this. And you say, okay, alarm.
Have you been in touch with family and friends who are still staying back in Kyiv? Like, is your neighborhood and your apartment building still okay?
Yes, my house is still standing. It is almost empty because everyone who has where to go, they went. They went to the west or maybe abroad. And as far as I know, it is defended by a squad of territorial defense based on the roof of my house.
Oh, wow. So on the roof of what is it, like an apartment building? And there's people up there with guns or whatever defending it?
Yes. There's a room for elevator where it's motor. And it's 26 stages.
Floors,
yes. It's new house. It's a new good house. And on the top, the territorial defending squad. It's about 3 or 4 people on one building and 3 or 4 people on another. They have kind of, base there, small base.
Wow.
Right now in Ukraine, arms, it's a usual thing.
Yeah, it must be crazy seeing your peaceful city where just a few weeks ago everyone was going to bars and clubs and hanging out, and suddenly it's been transformed into this war zone.
Yes, it's it's tears on my eyes, but right now we can't afford these tears for ourselves. We should be strong, to support each other.
So what are your plans right now? Do you plan on, at least for the time being, just kind of staying put where you are in Ternopil? Do you plan on heading farther west? What do you plan to do?
I don't want to leave country. I don't want to leave Ternopil. I want to go back to my home and to live my life. Because I'm in third generation Kiev, and Kiev is my home. I just want to live there to work. And that's it.
Yeah, you just want to have a peaceful life. You don't want to have to deal with any of this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The whole civilized world understands this situation where absolutely innocent and peaceful people suffering from the crazy man. One man makes so lot of problems for the whole world.
Thank you so much for all of your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the update, and I hope you and everyone around you stays safe.
Scott, I want to thank you, and I want to thank everyone, to your listeners, because even if you pray for Ukraine, we feel it and we are grateful for every word. Because right now it's so hard that we need your praise. We thank you very much to US and for the whole world.
If you're not already following the show on social media, you could check me out at Far From Home Podcast on Instagram, or follow me on Twitter, where I'm at Scott Gurian. I've been posting regular updates on the situation in Ukraine in both those places. Or you could always follow Far From Home on Facebook. My website is farfromhomepodcast.org, where you'll find tons of bonus content from past episodes. Thanks to Kevin MacLeod, who supplied some of the music I used in this episode. As always, you can drop me a line at info@farfromhomepodcast.org with any thoughts, comments, or questions. Until next time, thanks for listening.